Hello there. This is all a bit new, isn't it? I don't normally show my face on these videos, but I have just been working on my stream layout here. Making something, a bit more me, a bit more original. And okay, I've not finished yet. It's still a work in progress. But I have just done this animated webcam border that you can see, rotating crawlers quite nicely there. And I found this a bit of a challenge for two reasons. One, I'm a bit of an idiot, a bit of a beginner at this. And two, the tutorials I did find were very Adobe focused, Adobe. And, it's paid software. You've got to pay a subscription for Adobe. Whereas I'm cheap and poor, so I need my free software. Well, I got it sorted, so I thought I'd make a tutorial on how to do this yourself, make this basic webcam border. And spoiler alert, I'm actually recording this section, this intro, after all the other footage that I've recorded. So the border you see here is actually the border I make in this tutorial. This is the end result, okay? It's only basic. But, I think this is going to be a good starting point for anyone looking to kind of branch out and make their own stuff for their streams. So the first thing I'm going to do is I shall list off the software that we're going to use here. Put links in the description where you can download them. They're all free. They're for Windows. And then after that will be my step-by-step guide on actually how to use that software to create this border. Okay? You ready? Let's get to it. Okay, first off, we're going to be using Inkscape, which is an easy-to-use vector graphics program. After that, we'll be using DaVinci Resolve 16, which is a piece of video editing software. Then we've got Handbrake, which we're going to use to re-encode the video. And then finally, of course, you're going to need either OBS Studio or Streamlabs OBS. And I'm going to assume that you've already got them set up to stream. So now you have the programs downloaded and installed, the first thing to do is to set up your webcam on stream, crop the way you want it, and then grab a screen capture of your stream. It can be from a past stream or a recording like I've done here. It doesn't matter. I would recommend something though where the background contrasts against the edges of your webcam. Now take that screen grab and drop it into Inkscape. We're going to draw a line around the webcam area, so you want the draw Bezier curves and straight lines button over here. Pick a corner to start in, left click once, and then hold the control key, which locks the angle of the line into 45-degree increments, and move to the next corner. Left click again, drag down to the next corner, left click to the next corner, left click up to the first corner, and then left click twice to turn it into one solid square outline. At this point, it's worth zooming in on each line to make sure they're all at 90-degree angles to each other. Like here, you'll note the line doesn't match up with the selection outline. No problem, click the Edit Paths by Node button here, or press F2. Then you can adjust the line at each end by dragging these little squares around. What we're after here is for all four lines to be flush against the dotted selection line that surrounds the square. Shift the screen grab out of the way if it helps. We don't actually need it right now. Now, if you're happy we've got a square, or rectangle if that's what you're going for, that's cool. Let's thicken it up a bit. So on the right hand side column, you should see an option for fill and stroke. The keyboard shortcuts for this, by the way, is Shift, Control and F. From this menu, we want stroke style, as this will adjust the outline rather than what's between the outline. Adjust the outline to whatever thickness you feel like. If you want a nice chunky outline, that's cool. If you want something slimmer, that's cool too. I've chosen to round out the corners as well, but you do you. Go for what feels right. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm showing you how to use Inkscape. It's vector based, and it means we can resize everything quickly and easily. We can make these outlines as big or as small as we want and come back and change it all later without too much fuss and effort. So move the screen capture back. Don't worry about the colour yet, we're changing that later. For now, make sure the outline fits how you want it to fit. I've changed the outline colour to white using the stroke paint option, but I don't actually think the colour matters for our purposes. It's going to get overwritten soon anyway. Move the screen capture out of the way again, or delete it entirely, and ensure your outline is selected. Next, find the Export PNG image option in the right hand column. The keyboard shortcut for this is Shift, Control and E. Ensure selection is selected, and choose a place to save your image and a name. Oh, I could have selected hide all except selected here instead of moving the screen grab. Oh well. Then select export. We now have the base for our animation. Over to DaVinci Resolve. This is quite a daunting program at first, with a bit of a learning curve, but don't worry, I'll get you through it and we're not diving in too deep anyway. Open up a new project and it will drop you into the cut page. First thing we need to do is to set the frame rate to 60 frames per second. Now, we've got to do it now, as Resolve won't actually let us change it once we start editing, so go ahead and do that right now. You want to drag and drop your outline PNG into the media pool at the top left here. Then at the bottom left, click the edit button to take you to that page. Drag and drop the outline from the media pool onto the timeline at the bottom. As the default, DaVinci Resolve shows images for 5 seconds on a video, and I want my loop to be longer than that. So I'll drag the right edge of it out until the tooltip shows that the clip is 20 seconds long. Again, it is up to you to how long the loop should be, personal taste, but this is what I'm going with for this example. So now we've got a 20-second clip of a white square, but here is where it gets colourful. You want to right click the image on the timeline and select New Fusion Clip. Fusion is Resolve's effects editing thing, and that's how we're going to make our little animation. So go ahead and click the Fusion button at the bottom. Here's another daunting screen, but right now it's simple. We've got 2 nodes to start with. First of all, Media In 1 is our image. It's connected to Media Out 1, which is what Resolve is going to render at the end. Right now it's just a straight in to out, no fancy business whatsoever. Let's change that by decoupling the 2 nodes. Make sure they're both deselected by clicking in the background, and then select the background button up here. A new node appears for our background, and what we want to do is to attach the Media In node to the left hand side of the background, and then the background to the left hand side of the Media Out node. Oh look, the squares turn black. This is because the colour information for the image is now coming from that background node, and as a default it is set to black. So if we go to the inspector on the right hand side of the screen, we can change the background type from a solid colour to a gradient. The default again is black to white. You can change the colours by clicking on either of these little white triangles under the gradient. Choose whatever colours you want, experiment. But obviously, as you've seen, I'm going for the green and white. Now, the next step is to create the keyframes for our animation, and this is the most complicated part of the whole process in my opinion, so pay attention to this bit. What you want to do is drag both of the triangles closer to the middle like so. And now this next bit has to be done in a certain order, as Resolve stacks these triangles in order of age. The one on the left is the oldest, and you'll see why this is important in a second. Click on the gradient to the right of the right hand triangle. This creates a new triangle in white. Then click to the left of the left hand triangle to create a new one for green. We now have 4 triangles, and we want to first move the oldest triangle, which is now the second on the left. You keeping up alright? Click it to select it, and in the box underneath the gradient enter the value minus 0.02, which should just drop the triangle off the edge of the gradient. You don't want to use a bigger negative number really, as you'll not be able to select it and move it back later. It'll have dropped it too far off the edge. Now select the triangle on the right hand side and enter a value of minus 0.01 for this one. Then drag the remaining green triangle all the way to the left and the remaining white triangle all the way to the right. Now we're ready to set up the keyframes, so we're changing our attention to the timeline, shown as frame markers right across the middle of the screen here. We're already at frame 1, So we want to set it as a keyframe for our gradient. So let's go ahead and click the diamond next to the gradient all the way to the right of the screen. It'll turn red and our starting keyframe is set. On the timeline, you want to click right in the middle of it to move our position to the middle of the animation. Doesn't have to be precise, just eyeball it. No one will actually notice if the keyframe is off by a couple of frames either way, I promise. Then click the diamond next to the gradient again to mark a keyframe. Now we have to make the necessary changes to the keyframe, so we want to click and drag the top triangle on the left, which, if you remember, is the newest triangle. You want to drag it all the way to the right. As you do so, you'll see the colours on the overlay preview changing, and that's what our animation is going to do between those two keyframes. Nice. Right, back to the timeline and click right at the end. Again, we want to set it as a keyframe, so click the diamond next to the gradient and make it red again. Cool. Drag the next triangle on the left all the way across the right, and you'll see how the colours will change again as you do it. This was why the age order of the triangles was important, because Resolve stacks them in order of age, and it would have had you grabbing the wrong one if you hadn't done it in that order. Anyway, we now have a 20-second loop where the colours rotate from left to right. That's great, but what I'm going to do is grab a hold of the ends of the green line going through the preview here and drag them around. This adjusts the start and finish of the gradient so we can make it run from corner to corner instead, which I think looks a little bit better. Again, experimenting if you want, it's all up to you. Now, take this opportunity to play back the animation. It may look a bit jerky, but that'll smooth out once exported. What you're looking for is to make sure it's looping alright and the colours cover the whole square now that you've adjusted the green line. Are you happy with it? The next step then is to go to the bottom of the screen, switch over to the deliver page. This is where we export the animation to a video file. We want to give it a file name, select a location for the video to be saved to, and then, well, I guess I'm going to expose my ignorance in regards to video encoding here. I set my video to QuickTime with the H.264 codecs. If you know better than me, feel free to set the video type to whatever you want. I'm not going to be offended. And then click Add to Render Queue, and then start the render. Rendering may take a while depending on the resolution, frame rate, codec used, and the speed of your PC, so be patient. Go get yourself a drink or something. Once done, I'd recommend watching the video back to make sure it looks alright, but you will notice the file size. In my case, the file is over 6.5 megabytes in size, which isn't exactly huge, but if you've used a higher quality file type, done it uncompressed, it's going to be a lot bigger. But we want to get the file size down as low as possible, as the larger the file, the more precious CPU time it'll eat up when you're using it in OBS or slobs. So let's open Handbrake. Hey, no worries here, we're on the last stretch, nearly there. Handbrake is easy. Drag our new video file to, well, where it tells you to drag it, and then change the video format to WebM. The next part is optional really, but switch to the video tab, and I've set it so the frame rate is 30 rather than the source 60. I'm also going to set it to peak frame rate and average bitrate, leaving that number blank. Well, why do the original in high quality at 60 frames per second then? Well, it's just in case I want to go back and make changes later. Start big in high quality and then scale down. It gives better results than scaling up. Anyway, hit start encode, and this again might take a while. We've had that drink, so maybe it's toilet time or something. Right, I'm skipping to that being done. Here's the difference it's made, from 6.2 megabytes to just under 2. It's a nice little saving there. Every little bit helps, right? Whoa, hold on there, Tom from the past. This is Tom from the present here, and just as I was editing this video, I decided to have a little play with Handbrake again, and I have just found that actually setting the video quality to constant and then starts up about 22 as default, lower it down, maybe into the 30s. Or should I say higher up into the 30s. The higher the number, the lower the quality. And I found lowering the quality doesn't impact the quality of the animation itself that much, but drastically reduces the file size. And you'll find that I have now got it down to 445 kilobytes in size for the entire animation, which is absolutely fantastic and is going to help anyone out there on lower spec machines. So give that a try, have a mess around with that as well, and you know, see if you can get that to a kind of a happy place for yourself. All right, back to the video. Thanks. Well then, it's time to fire up OBS. I'm using Streamlabs OBS here, but you know, it's largely the same in how it works. You're gonna have to ignore the recursive view stretching off into infinity here. That's what happens when you capture screen. Anyhow, you want to add a new source to your scene, and you want to select a new media source. Again, select add a new source if it asks. Give it a name. Browse the file on your PC. Don't forget to set it to loop like I didn't do in this footage. You might want to use hardware encoding as well. Click done and whoa, that's big. But no worries, we can resize it down. And now for the next problem. There's no transparency in the overlay. We can't see through the middle. No problem. Right click on the overlay in the source list and select filters. Then select image mask / blend, and in the path field you want to select the original PNG file that we created. Change the type to alpha channel, like I didn't here. What this does is it cuts out any part of the animation that is transparent in the PNG file. In other words, the bit in the middle we want to actually see our camera through, you know. Then lastly, all we got to do now is just a bit more adjusting to get the size of the overlay just how we want it around the webcam. And there we have it, our webcam border is complete. And while it's only basic, I think I'd rather call it simple yet effective, because it looks nice and it scales well. As you saw, it scaled quite nicely around the smaller webcam I use for my gameplay scenes, and also it stretches up to, what shall we call this, a just chatting scene, perhaps. And now we know the basics, we can kind of experiment and go from there. Change the colours how you want, mess with the shape a little bit. I mean, what I think I'll do next is, given the time, is I will look into some, shall we say, non-square borders, you know, something a bit rounded, perhaps. And if this video does well enough, maybe I'll do another tutorial on how to do that once I do actually figure out. But that's it for now. So if you found this helpful, I would really appreciate it if you gave the video a like, perhaps subscribe to the channel, or share to your friends. And hopefully I shall see you next time. Happy experimentations. See you later.